It'd be a lie to say I don't love Nintendo. They're one of my favorite gaming companies of all time, despite some wacky decisions that they make, which we will be talking about. But I grew up with Sony and Nintendo primarily, and they both had my backs as a kid when it came to gaming. I've had an N64, I've had DS's, Game Boy Advance, GameCube, Wii, you name it. Pretty much almost every Nintendo console that is N64 and onwards I have owned. I'm sure just like many of you guys out there watching, probably same situation. So understand that this is not coming from a place of hate, because I love Nintendo and I want to see them be as good as they can and provide the best gaming experiences that they can. So this comes from a place of love for Nintendo, but I have to say it, I think Nintendo's failing us a little bit with the Switch 2. I mean that in a lot of different ways, and first and foremost, there's already the whole pricing fiasco. I think many of you already know about that, and if you don't, all you need to know, games too expensive for no reason on Nintendo platforms, and Mario Kart 8 is $80, and now that bundle that comes with the Switch 2, they're out of them. They don't make them anymore. So if you find one out in the wild, that's one of the last few. So yes, if you want Mario Kart World, you have to pay $80 now. That sucks. And I know part of it's due to economics in the world and whatnot, but it's still bad. I feel like it shouldn't be at this point. And not every company is even doing that for every game. So there's definitely not a necessity for that for every single Nintendo release to be $70 or some of them $80 for some reason, but mostly Mario Kart at the moment. But yeah, that's like kind of a no-brainer. Like the price is something we've all complained about, everyone has recognized. So there's no reason to go that much further into it. But one thing that I find a little bit disappointing, and this is not going to connect with everybody, but it has to do with the hardware a little bit. And I love the massive jump that the Switch 2 is compared to the Switch 1. It's exactly the kind of jump that it needed. However, there's some things about the hardware that I'm not necessarily the happiest with. And it kind of has to do with the power a bit of the console. The Switch 2 is basically better than the Steam Deck, I feel. However, there's evidence that they underclock the system, I guess, for battery, which I understand. And I feel like it should go a bit higher when it's in docked mode when it comes to unlocking the power of the console. So I feel like that's something that they could easily change through an update, but that's a little disappointing. But more so, the bigger thing with this console is that screen and handheld mode is a blurry mess. And some people aren't going to notice it if you're not necessarily tech savvy and you're not aware of frame rates and all that kind of stuff. It probably just looks like another screen to you. However, there's a lot of us that do notice that stuff and are very sensitive to it, and I'm one of those people. I have a gaming PC. I'm into gaming tech. I have a lot of stuff that is higher refresh rate, whether it's my phone, my monitors, whatever. So I see high frame rates all the time above 60. And it's not that the Switch 2 can't do that. It does do 120 for some games. However, that screen is some of the slowest LCD screens that we have seen in a very long time. And it's almost like Game Boy Advance like quality blurry. People like Digital Foundry did a test, and yeah, they said it's one of the slowest LCD screens they have seen in modern day. And it is extremely noticeable to my eye. Or a good way for you to tell, I feel, is just like go in a game, especially a 3D one, or even a 2D one, and look slightly behind your character as you spin the camera, or like play Sonic Mania or something like that. You will see ghosting trails of the entire screen. You'll see the level ghosting, you'll see Sonic ghosting, everything just has like a ghosting after image, and it makes it look very blurry. And I don't like the way it looks at all, especially when I have personally an OLED monitor for my desktop setup, and I also play docked mode on there, and it has almost no ghosting at all because OLED monitors are extremely fast when it comes to response time, and there's almost no ghosting. So it's very jarring for me to go from the OLED monitor back to handheld mode, and it almost makes me not want to use my Switch to handheld mode. Now, hopefully this can get fixed later in the future with a Switch to OLED model, kind of like they did for the Switch 1. However, that's another $450 or maybe $500 that you're gonna have to spend in the future, and I'm probably gonna have to spend in the future. just to not deal with that ghosting anymore, and it will make handheld mode probably a lot more appealing. Well, that's a bit of a big failure, I feel, on part of Nintendo for this hardware. They could have easily not chosen a screen that horrendous. I have no idea how they did do that, but also there's no overdrive applied, and if you don't know what that means, essentially overdrive helps monitors with ghosting, and it's commonly used by a lot of the monitor manufacturers. So there's something they could push in an update, I believe, and it would make it a little bit better, but it won't be OLED quality. And my third point is probably the biggest point of this video, and it's just the release schedule of the games and kind of the way this console is moving with announcements. It's been pretty dry, and I know that sounds weird to say because we've had games this year, but it feels like there's no Mario Odyssey kind of big splash. There's no Breath of the Wild big game for its first year. And also, honestly, for the RPGs, Xenoblade 2 was a huge game. All of that in the same year was kind of crazy. And in comparison to Switch 2, yeah, it had Mario Kart World, which a lot of people turned on that game for many, many reasons. And me personally, I did not really enjoy it enough to keep playing it. And I just got it because I wanted a launch game. And then there was Donkey Kong, which basically came out a month or so after the Switch 2 dropped. And it's a really good game. It was even nominated for Game of the Year, but it didn't really have that same impact as Mario Odyssey, I feel. And it didn't sell nearly as much as Mario Kart World. I think Mario Kart World has sold almost as many copies as there are Switch 2s out there that are sold to customers, which is obvious, but I just don't think it made the big enough splash like a Mario Odyssey, even if it is probably just as good to a lot of people, or, you know, whatever. And then on top of that, we had Kirby Air Riders, which was a nice surprise. It was a very good Sakurai game, and it had a lot of features, but I don't think it's going to make as big of a splash, even if I think that game is kind of a console seller. I just think it's more on the niche side because it's a racing game and Kirby on top of that. So, you know, that's kind of unfortunate, but I think it's a really good game. However, then we have Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, and I'm going to be honest, I have not heard a peep about that game. Like, that game had no cultural impact whatsoever, probably because it's a Warriors game, but I haven't really heard too much about it. I heard the story was good and whatnot, but like, I didn't really see a huge campaign for advertising the game personally, and I didn't hear that many people talk about it. And I didn't even see content on it really, and even like this Zelda content creators have barely touched the game. So it's just kind of telling to me that that game kind of just came and went. And then we have Metroid Prime 4, which is a game that I really like personally, but it's very controversial, and I don't think it deserved all that. However, that is just the state of the game, unfortunately, whether I think that or not. And it kind of sucks to see that because I think that could hurt sales, even though it looks like it's selling well, but it's kind of hard to tell. But overall, it's been kind of a rocky year for Nintendo, but not really in terms of sales, but more so in terms of impact and long-term enjoyment of these franchises. Nintendo really needs to bring up the big guns for 2026 and have some games ready. And since games take longer to make, I'm just not quite sure how this is going to turn out. I don't even know what they could really have in their pipeline right now. Zelda released a game, Donkey Kong released a game, Mario technically released a game, and Metroid released a game as well. And I'm just not quite sure what the next big hitter is going to be. For 2026, there's not much we know about. I believe Fire Emblem is next year, so that might be a game that is a big hit because it's 3 houses centered. And then we have, I think, that Yoshi game, but that game, I don't kind of haven't heard anything about it or anybody talk about it since it got announced, and I almost forgot it even existed. But overall, the pipeline isn't super impressive and super impactful, even if the games may be good. So I think that's a really big thing with this console right now, and it kind of just feels like we're in limbo at the moment with owning a Switch 2. Like, when are we going to get the big hitters? Like, when is it going to start to feel like a complete library? And I know it's been out for only 6 months at this point, but I feel like at this point in the Switch 1's life, it felt a bit more exciting to see what was going to come next. And so far, we don't really know much. But this leads me to my biggest point, which is, I think, the one that bothers me the most. And it's the backwards compatibility support for this console is good. It is very, very good. However, There's a lot of work to be done with this when it comes to free upgrades and just updating these games to be better on Switch 2. I'm a big Xenoblade fan, and it's in the thumbnail of the video. I really, really, really want Xenoblade 1, 2, 3, and X to all get their free updates to make the games not blurry, make them sharper, make them run at 60 FPS, so that way it will be more enjoyable to play these games. And a big problem is a lot of these games run at 720p or even lower than that. Some of them reach down to 480p on handheld mode. It makes it extremely blurry on the Switch 2 screen because the Switch 2 screen is 1080p, so it looks even worse on Switch 2 actually compared to Switch 1. If you were to play Xenoblade X, for example, right now on your handheld Switch 1, you would pretty much have a sharp game, and if you do it on Switch 2, it's going to be a little blurry. It kind of sucks. And Monolith Soft is one of Nintendo's biggest developers right now. They've helped with Mario Kart World. I think they've helped with Splatoon, I believe. They helped with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. They're like their golden goose right now for creating video game worlds and just collaborating and making these amazing games. And Xenoblade is their specific game series that I think is amazing and that everyone should at least give a shot and check out. And it really sucks that it's been pretty much over 6 months and we've had no update for those games at all. And honestly, not even just Xenoblade, there's been a lack of updates for many Switch games, and a lot of them just don't look that great or run that great on Switch 2. And I'm just wondering, why is it taking so long for a lot of free updates? We got a couple. We got like Mario Odyssey, we got ARMS for some reason, Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker, Clubhouse games, Mario Deluxe, and then the Pokemon games. And honestly, the Pokemon games got the best updates of all time. They look better and they run better, and it was free. And I'm wondering, like, what is taking so long for a lot of these other games to get free updates and just get upgraded for Switch 2? I think it's really unfortunate that we're like 6 months in and nothing has pretty much been added to that pipeline when it comes to Nintendo first party games since launch. I think except maybe the Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 remasters, re-release or whatever that they did. I think they released with a Switch 2 update or Switch 2 upgrade, but that's really about it. Everything else has been like a paid for upgrade, and honestly, I'd even take a paid for upgrade for the Xenoblade games or some of these other games as well, like Fire Emblem. I think like it just makes sense, I guess, if they're going to add new content to them, and that's why it's taking a little longer, and I'll gladly pay for that. But can I please know when that's coming? If that is the case, thank you, Nintendo. And I just think other games like Smash Ultimate, if they're not doing a deluxe version, just please upgrade that game as well. Please upgrade, like I said, Xenoblade X, Xenoblade 2, all of those games. We need them upgraded, and overall, I just want to see Nintendo do better with that and shift into gear for getting those out. So I think that's really unfortunate. But overall, those are my grievances with the Switch 2 era so far, now that we're 6 months in. And I really want to see, things shift into gear, and maybe a new Nintendo Direct that's not mid will show us some stuff and, maybe change some things around, and hopefully an OLED model comes eventually. And I don't know, everything in here I think is fixable, which is why I'm talking about it, at least in this way. And if it wasn't fixable, I'd probably not even care enough and just kind of shift away from Nintendo and just keep playing on my PC. But yeah, hopefully, if you're a Nintendo fanboy or whatever, and, you're watching this video, probably really upset because, you don't like criticism, but that's okay. This video is not for you. So I hope you find another video that makes you happy. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.
Well, whatever happens, happens.